let's begin with what has been apparently the West gone mad, and I want to include the United States and Donald Trump in on this. Now, Donald Trump has unleashed a series of tweets. As you know, Pepe, Russia has been just absolutely pummeling and pounding Ukraine in response to the 300 plus drone attacks or attempted attacks per day shot down by Russian missile air defenses. But here was Donald Trump's first tweet that he put out, or Truth Social. I've always had a very good relationship with Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He's gone crazy. He's killing people needlessly. And we're not talking just about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities in Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. I've always said he wants all of Ukraine, not just a piece of it. And I am being proven right. But if he does, it will lead to the downfall of Russia. He then followed this up with, there have been numerous reports of sanctions being mulled by Trump, more sanctions. Of course, we know Europe is completely on that. Lindsey Graham is writing op-eds in the Wall Street Journal about 500% tariffs through a Senate bill. But here is the latest Truth Social now. What Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. Pepe, talk about what's going on here, because all of this is in response to Russia's apparent advances. It seems like Vladimir Putin and Russia have seized the initiative, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this reaction. Is the honeymoon over for Donald Trump's apparent, what the Western media has been claiming all along, a honeymoon phase between Russia or Putin and Trump?
Well, is there a honeymoon in his head? And with whom? Look, this is, makes you want to go to bed, really, because the level of stupidity now, it's off the charts. No contextualization, of course. The tweet where he says that Putin is crazy now is the new meme. Everything that happens from now on will be subordinated to this Putin is crazy meme. And this applies to the Trump administration, to the people against him, to the deep state, to the European chihuahuas, to the warmongers, etc. Everything that happens is because Putin is crazy. So we are back to where we were even before the SMO, or the day the SMO was launched. At the time, everybody was saying, Putin is crazy. He's an animal. He's deranged. He's invading Europe. Now we're back to the same thing, like nothing happened for, 3 years and 3 months. It's pathetic, in fact. And obviously, neither Trump nor Trump 2.0 actors, much less anybody in the deep state, to contextualize to the President of the United States why the Russians are launching, still is not over, a devastating bombardment of selected targets all over Ukraine. In a matter of days, between 4 and 5, Ukraine launched more than 1,100 drones against civilian targets all across Russia, and even against Moscow directly. So this compounds the attack of a swarm of drones against Putin's helicopter when he was going to Kursk. This is an attempted assassination of the president of the Russian Federation. It doesn't get more hardcore than that. So obviously, we have a response, and the response, considering what happened, was relatively measured. It will go on, of course. Of course, Trump never contextualizes anything. When you are in a Narcissus drowned world of your own, when you play all the characters in Alice in Wonderland, as a Chinese essay brilliantly depicted a few weeks ago, everything happens inside your head, literally. And then whatever you say goes because you're the ruler of the world, his own terminology. Once again, maybe tomorrow everything will change. Maybe tomorrow say, okay, I'm going to pick up the phone and call Putin again. But as it stands, we have this, once again, childish tantrum, which, for all practical purposes, buries any possibility of civilized dialogue between Washington and Moscow. Of course, from the Russian side, they are demonstrating once again infinite Taoist patience. Peskov said, no, the situation is complicated, it's very emotional, we appreciate the President of the United States' efforts to find a solution, etc. But the circles of power in Moscow are getting fed up with this whole charade. Once again, another kabuki. So, from now on, the response will continue. There are no illusions that this ceasefire kabuki will go anywhere. First of all, because Trump doesn't know where is it going. He doesn't have a strategy. He doesn't even have tactics. He's praying for a sort of Hail Mary pass that will give him the so-called ceasefire and the solution. It's not going to happen. Putin, on the last phone call, explained in detail to him, nothing will happen if we don't address the root causes of the conflict. The President of the United States cannot address the root causes of the conflict because that will implicate two things. One, he goes against the whole deep state and the whole collective West policy against Russia, not only for the past 30-something years, but for the past 10 years and even before. And two, if he does that, he will have to recognize tacitly in front of the whole planet the strategic defeat of the empire of chaos and all the chihuahuas against Russia. So nothing's going to happen. So at least I would say that the kabuki now, it's naked. Everybody can see it for what it is. There won't be any ceasefire. There won't be any negotiations going very, very deep into the origin of this whole tragedy. And what Lavrov, for the past few months, started to say openly, this will be solved in the battlefield, is not only what Putin and the Security Council think and the Minister of Foreign Relations, but the majority of the Russian population now wants. Okay, let's go all the way. All right. And what Medvedev basically... of course, it was lots of sense of humor, of course, that tweet where he basically says, well, if things go on like this, the buffer zone in Ukraine, and when you look at the map, it's like 99% of present-day Ukraine before rump Ukraine in the future. So that's where we're going. This means there will be no end to this war in 2025. That's for sure. And maybe not even in 2026. This will go on. It will be horrible. It will be what we experienced these past few months, accelerated, and more the Russians are going to start devastating what's left of Iranian infrastructure, of Ukrainian infrastructure. Sorry, I still have Iran in my mind because I came back from Iran last week. So this is where we are, Danny, and all of you in the audience. It's grim, to say the least.
Yeah, well, actually, you mentioned that tweet by Medvedev, and here it is. He posted a map of the buffer zone that essentially is the entirety of Ukraine, with just a tiny sliver bordering Poland.
Yeah, but that sliver is bordering Poland, so the sliver is going to disappear as well.
Yes, exactly. So talk about the freakout, though, because the Western mainstream media has been posting for days and days on end about Russia. As you said, this will be solved on the battlefield. Well, Russia has been launching just intense drone attacks, missile strikes on Ukraine. Talk about this freakout, because it's what Donald Trump is essentially referring to, and it's what now has, of course, Germany, now the UK, France, and Germany has said, Mr. Merz, the new chancellor, has said that the United States is in on the long-range weapons now, too, being lifted any restrictions. So talk about this freakout. what is Russia doing, and what does it all mean?
Well, I have much better picture of what's really going on in the high circles of power. I'm going to Russia in 2 days. I'm back in Russia in 2 days. So I've been doing a BRICS tour, in fact. Started in China, went to Iran, then 3 days in Russia for Victory Day, and now I'm back in Russia, and I'll spend the months of June in Russia. So I have a much better picture of how hardcore the situation is going to be in the next few weeks and in the next few months, going deep into summer. It does not look good, and people are severely angry by this assassination attempt against Putin directly. Coming from the Kremlin so far, it's been very modulated, calculated, discreet, in fact, but they are sitting, of course, because they know that wherever that came from, did Trump know about the intel that facilitated this drone attack, the swarm of drones attacks against a presidential helicopter? Was he forced on it after the fact? Did he know after the fact? How much the Americans, well, the Americans obviously supplied all the intel to Kiev, of course. So the Russians are putting all this puzzle together, and when they have answers, then we're going to start to have an even more hardcore response. There's no question about that. But once again, it's grim because any possibility that we might have had of a civilized dialogue starting at least to address, if not the root causes, but at least some of it or something around the root causes. And then, of course, assuming there would be some sort of settlement, and Trump would have to admit that the settlement, people are winning a war. They declare how the war is going to be finished. Losers never finish wars. This is completely absurd. And Trump and the empire, they are on the losing side. So at least we were, until what, a week ago or so, maybe we were heading towards at least a little more dialogue, a little more conversation, to quote Elvis, on the table. Now even that has vanished. Lavrov is trying to put a brave face on it. Okay, we're probably going to meet again, not in the Vatican, of course, which is completely absurd. The Catholic Church deciding the fate of two Christian Orthodox nations. That's beyond, that doesn't even qualify as a joke. But now, even Lavrov saying, okay, maybe we're going to meet again in Istanbul, but on what terms? Especially if the Russians put back together everything that happened leading to this drone attack against the presidential helicopter.
Yeah, and the Western media has been responding to what Russia is doing with regard to these massive strikes over the last several days, saying, hell is being rained on Ukraine. But very little mention of exactly what you just talked about, that Vladimir Putin himself was being targeted, Pepe. He was being targeted. There was a massive drone attack on the presidential helicopter as it was flying from Kursk. It's absolutely stunning. But I think it alludes to exactly what you were referencing earlier, that what we are seeing is the losing side trying to now scramble for whatever's left. It's almost like there's this sudden realization that this won't be settled at the negotiating table, and they're trying to pin all their blame onto Russia again.
Of course, and that's we come back to the top meme from now on ad infinitum. Putin is crazy. So there cannot be any solution for Ukraine because Putin is crazy. It's a circular argument, and that's it. This is their plan B, in fact. And when I say they, it's the whole gang, from Trump administration, people around Trump, part of Trump 2.0, to deep state, to all the chihuahuas and warmongers in Europe. Everybody. The whole fragmented collective West. This is their plan B. And now it's in the open.
Yeah, definitely out in the open. And then final comment on this, Pepe. What is the significance for you with regard to the long-range weapons? You know, this once again, it feels like now we have Germany in the lead, but the German Chancellor Merz said that the United States is also involved in this. There's so many conflicting reports. On the one hand, you'll hear that Trump is not considering increased sanctions, is very hesitant on utilizing any kind of long-range weapons, Ukraine utilizing any long-range weapons against Russia. And then on the other, you'll see this, Merz saying that the United States, UK, France are all ready to greenlight long-range weapons use from Ukraine again. Deja vu. What do you make of this circus right now that is just becoming more and more apparent?
In fact, you just defined it. Another circus, because this decision has been made months ago, even before a BlackRock chancellor was elected. Everybody knew that this had been decided. They're just waiting for the right moment to announce it. And now he is announcing as chancellor. Everybody knows that. The Russians already knew it. So of course, sooner or later, we're going to have Taurus coming in, and we're ready for them. We're already prepared to face Taurus. So it's not going to change anything in the battlefield. It will change in terms of what sort of response we're going to have from the Russian side when the first Taurus start to hit civilian targets deep into the Russian Federation. Then we're going to have some real rock and roll. Oh, yeah. There's no question about that. But for the moment, only speculation. And if the Americans are in on it, of course they are. And they are still... don't forget that the previous batches, they're still supplying weapons to Ukraine. Nothing has changed. There's no new batch, but the old batches still keep coming. So nothing essentially has changed in the battlefield, apart, of course, from the steady Russian advance. At the same time, these drone swarms launched by Ukraine, it's an enormous problem for Russia. It's very, very serious. And I'm waiting to see how deep we can have this conversation in Moscow, because it's still a taboo. These drone swarms, they disturb tremendously air traffic, civilian air traffic in several Russian regions, including the airports around Moscow. Vnukovo, Domodedovo, now it's back and forth, no planes taking, it's very complicated. And of course, the Russian internet, because they cut off internet immediately. And people are starting to get really, really pissed about it. Average Russian citizens, So this Ukrainian Kiev strategy, very cheap, is very, very disturbing. And for the moment, the Russians have not found a way to counteract it. So this will be one of the key topics of conversation in Russia for the next few weeks, in fact. In parallel, of course, with geoeconomics, there's going to be the St. Petersburg Forum, which will be very, very important in terms of how it's going to connect to the BRICS later, early in July in Rio, how it's going to connect to the current forum here today and tomorrow in Kuala Lumpur, where we have the Golden Triangle, how they are defined here in Asia, sitting on the same table. And this is immense. We still don't know. I'm waiting for their final declaration, which is coming only tomorrow, late afternoon here, Asia time, Southeast Asia time. But we're going to have the GCC, the 6 ones, including the 3 that lavished zillions of dollars on Trump, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. ASEAN 10, their number one partner, trade partner is China, and China on the same table, discussing lineaments of the future multinodal, multipolar world with a joint declaration focused on several areas, including trade in their own currencies. And this is going to overlap with BRICS in a little over a month from now. So don't forget that many of these who are in Kuala Lumpur today and tomorrow, they're going to be at the table at BRICS in Rio as well, as full members and as partners. So this, the first part of our conversation was so grim. I hope now we're starting the second part, we can talk about the auspicious aspects, geoeconomic aspects, in terms of connectivity, in terms of the BRICS lab, everything there, they continue to test in terms of settlements, payment settlements, a new currency, not yet, but new forms of payment, digital currency, you name it, you know. So what happens in Kuala Lumpur is directly linked to what's going to happen in Rio. And in between, we're going to have an absolutely irrelevant summit, the NATO summit in 2025 of June, which won't decide anything. They will go for their plan B. Putin is crazy, so we have to continue the war. This is the advanced headline of the NATO summit, which is going to be in the Netherlands, by the way, hosted by that piece of Gouda.